Hello, everybody. So, everybody is prepared to have your mind changed. So, as this is yes, MC said, I'm a developer circle lead. Developer circle is a community from Facebook, and we have it following all the world, and I organized the Brazilian one. So, and I'm Brazilian too. I'm a VP too, and I'm the São Paulo CJS organization. So it's a really pleasure to be here. So, do you really code oriented to domain? You know, who works building APIs, microservices, using DDD here? So, okay, nice. When you are building a microservice, a service using DDD, okay, you could just say we code we code oriented to domain, but I'm not sure if we do it actually. So, for example, I think I don't know if everybody knows, but this one is the clean architecture diagram, and we have basically here our domain and our infrastructure. The domain, we have the use case and the entities, and everything else is our infrastructure layer. And the idea of the DDD cell for us is to code-oriented domain. So basically, if we code-oriented domain, we must to care only about the domain, right? So, but we didn't do it actually. And what do we have inside the domain? We have the business requirements. I think this is the most important part of our software because because it's pay us our bill. When you build a software, if you don't attend the customer requirement, the business requirement, the customer don't will use your software, and if the customer don't use your software, they don't will bill, they don't will pay for you, and if they don't pay for you, you can't pay your bills. So basically, because this is super important part, is the most important part of our software. So, if this is the most important part of our software, why we write a lot of code that don't matter for the domain? For example, we have the routes, authentication, documentation, auditable features. Your customer don't care about if your API, if your Microsoft is documented. Okay, we care about it because we are developer. I'm a developer too, and for me, documentation is super important. Documentation, tests, everything else is important. I know, but your customer, your stakeholder, the CEO of your company, unfortunately, they don't care about it. Okay, so I know. It's a constantly fight between business team and developers team, but how we could to stop waste time on the infrastructure code and focus only in domain. So, I'm sorry. So, how we could to do it? I would like to present you the HerbsJS. HerbsJS is a framework. It's a JavaScript framework that led you to focus only in domain and dynamically provide you the infrastructure layer. But just a disclaimer, it's except by our CLI. The herbs don't generate code, okay? Just to be clear. Everything is provided dynamically in runtime for you. And I will explain for you right now how it works. So, different from the other frameworks that focus on infrastructure layer, like roads, for example, the Express, focus in transport layer like REST. We have the Apollo that focus in transport layer like GraphQL. We have the Kinix that help you with the data layer. We focus in the domain, in the business requirement. So, but don't worry, we could use it everything together. You could use the herbs together with all the other frameworks. And I think this is my favorite part. Okay, so I'd like to explain for you a little bit about the benefits to get focus only in domain. It's a real case at Vortex. I think the Vortex is our best case. The Vortex is a company, it's a financial company that implemented the herbs I think in 8% of the production softwares, and we get the first value we got is the easier learn curve for new team members. So when you receive a new team members, they spend a lot of time learning about the business, learn about how the infrastructure is configured, how you need to do for the deployments. They need to know how they could to deliver the features, but how they could to document it too. So when we focus only on demand, everything else about the demand don't matters, So we have less bugs because when you are implementing, when you are maintaining a software and we need, for example, add a new property in your entity. So you need to update your entity file, you need to update your use case file, you need to update the documentation, you need to update your repository file. We changed many files to add a new feature. So, and sometimes we are human first, like the first talk said. We did some mistakes. In one file we write in uppercase, in another file we write that in lowercase, or we just forgot to do the update in some specific file, and we start to get bugs in production or in dev test, in dev server, because we just did a little mistake in infrastructure code. But and when we focus only in the domain, it's we don't have this problem anymore. And we have a fast delivery because, of course, we write less. And it's very nice because, when you deliver fast, your PM, your manager, your company be more happy. So it's good for us, developers. And I think this is the most important part of the HerbsJS, that it's easy to maintain. Once the infrastructure code is provided for you dynamically, we just care about the business requirement. So if we need a new feature, if we change a new feature, our old feature, the infrastructure code will be regenerated for us. Not generated, provided, because remember, it's don't generate code. And I think it's not related so much about the domain, but it's related about the HerbsJS. The HerbsJS provides for us some self-documented code that I will show you soon. So because this, when you have a self-documented code, the PM, PO, the non-developers people could to validate your code. It's super interesting. So, and how it works. So how the herbs could provide the infrastructure for us, and how we could code only the domain. Okay, so basically the HerbsJS working via metadata. So when you write your use case and your entities, there has many metadata like your use case name, your fields, your validation there. We have many information that we don't care about in your code, but it's super useful to, for example, to configure your controllers or your repository and to generate your documentation, for example. So, but basically the idea is stop to wasting time in infrastructure code and code only domain. But how it works? Let's try to do some code to understand a little bit more. So as I showed earlier, we have our domain, and to code our domain, we use the Herbs core libraries. And the Herbs core libraries help to build only the entities and use case. So our glues could to read your use cases and entities and provide you the infrastructure. So, for example, here I have an entity and I'm just importing the herbs core that in the first line. I'm importing the entity, ID, field, and I'm importing the herbarium too, that is a glue that will consume the use case and the entities to do something. And we have another entity here. And to create an entity, basically, I call the entity function passing two arguments. The first one is the name, and the second one is the fields. But here you could think, okay, nothing new. It's super similar with a class, but when you are using the HerbsJS, we are creating many metadata here. For example, when I read this entity, I could get this entity name. So with the entity name, I could generate, for example, a schema for GraphQL, or I could put into the documentation. So when I have my validations, for example, in the address, I have it's required, and the minimal length for this field is 3. I could put this information in my documentation. So I don't need to write it because it's already inside my code, you know? And I could use it for configure everything else. And our first glue, I think this glue is the most simpler glue we have. We just storage our entity inside the herbarium, so we could use it in any place that we want in our code. So, and we have our use case too. And basically, here it's super similar with the entity. We have a function that we import from herbs core library, and we have two parameters here. The first one is our name, our description, and the second one is our body that has our request, our response, and you see everything else is inside your use case. So it's, for example, usually we put our response in our transportation layer. So when we have, for example, a REST GraphQL and maybe a RabbitMQ layer, we need to specify this in all that layers, in these all 3 layers. So here we bring it for the domain, for the use case, and everything that you do is inside the use case. We have authorization too that follow the same logic. Instead, you implement it in your transport layers, you could implement it inside your use case. So when you add a new transport layer, the authorization already inside your use case, so you don't need to implement it again, you know. Or for example, we have a error here, and we specify this error is a permission denied. We could use this information to choose the right HTTP response, for example. So, and we have a setup. This setup is a function to run before the use case. Usually, we use this function to put the injection inside our context, and the context is a variable to store everything about your use case. And it's super interesting because we could use it for, to do a little APM. So, and the last feature you have inside a use case is the steps. Basically here, this steps is minimized, but when we open it, we have the business requirement. So, for example, I have the first one that check if the attendee is valid. So I do a validation there, and I have the save attendee step. So basically, this save my attendee. And I didn't read the code to understand this business requirement, this use case. Check if the attendee is valid, and I didn't read the code to know this use case save the attendee. I just read the steps because it's a self-documented code, and it's interesting because if you implement some a hard logic, a hard business requirement here, someone of the business team could validate your backend before to put it in production. So, we could have less problems in production, working together with the business team. So, to run a use case is super simple. I think it's the simplest part. We import it, so we just instantiate it. So we do the authorization. So we have, if this use case don't have authorization, okay, we could to return a forbidden error. And after run it, that context variable stores everything we got inside our use case. So we could to print this variable, and we could to got, for example, how much time they spent to run this use case, how much memory we used that, what was the user that was authenticated in your use case, and everything else. And it's super important because auditable features is super hard to implement, and it's super important. For example, today I work in financial service, and everything that we need to do there must be auditable, because if for some reason I transfer money for a friendly account, I need to prove it's not a bug, because I need to prove my software is security. I don't want to have an account in a bank that has no security products. So, okay, it's the domain, entities, and use case. So what about the glues? The glues, as I said before, is another library that will read your use case and read your entities and will provide you something. For example, we have the entities and use case, and we have the glues. We have many glues. This is not all the glues, it's just some examples. So, for example, we have the HerbsJS. HerbsJS is a glue that will read your use case and entities and will generate your documentation. So, as you already typed the descriptions, the request, the response, and everything else, everything about your business requirement will be documented in the result. So we have herbs to GraphQL. So we will read your use case and generate it for you the GraphQL layer. It's the same for the REST, Kinix, Mongo, and others. So, for example, when you are implementing a glue, we read our use case. You could to require it yourself, file by file, or using index.js. But you could to use the herbarium because it's easier. You could to do some queries inside your use case when you are using herbarium. So we could to extract, for example, ID, the group that is the entity, and your use case. So we return an object, and we create a route. Here I'm using the express. It's a simple route. So we pass this use case list for the range shelf HTML. This function we could to find in HerbsJS library. And we pass two arguments. The first one is the name of your project, and the second one is your use case list. So the result is a document. Look, we have our steps, we have our requests, we have our response. At the left, we have our entities. So, how much time we save when we use the herbs? So to build this documentation and maintain it updated, we spend so much time. And who here updates every time the documentation? In that feature that you deliver in 20 minutes, you forgot to update the documentation, and when we did it a lot, the documentation, got so not updated. So this is only one example. I have another example here. So we have the herbs to GraphQL. Basically, we use the herbarium to read our use case again, and we build a list with all the operations. So basically, we iterate for each use case, and we use the function use case to mutation, and we pass the use case and a resolver. Here, you could use any resolver that you want, but we provide you the full resolver too. So basically, we do it for mutation and queries. And we do it for entities too, for generate the types. And the result, look, the result is all your schemas. And come on, in my opinion, I hate to write the GraphQL schemas because I spend a lot of time and I need to change my class, so I need to change my schema too. I feel it's a repeatable job. And if you stop to think, it's all the same job every time that I build a microservice. I don't have a super logic in GraphQL layer. I don't have a super logic in REST layer. It's always the same code, the same structure. I don't know. I build microservices for 80 years, and in all these 80 years, it was quite the same code I write in the REST layer and GraphQL layer. So come on, we are developer. We like to build in the funny part that is building complex algorithms. Writing the same code all the day, all the life is super boring. So why I can't automate it? We are developers. We need to automated everything. I already automated my Tinder. Why not automate the REST layer? Come on. So, and it's just two examples. We have many others glues. We have glues. We have glues for REST, GraphQL, Mongo, Kinix. We have. I don't remember all the glues, but we have many. And to do a better framework, we could use we thought in provide you this code, this all this structure code. Okay, you could write a Herbs project from scratch, creating your entity, creating your use case. After this, creating the REST files and to consume your use case. You could create the repositories files that will use some glues to consume your use case. You can do it, but you can use the RCLI too. And basically, when you type herbs new, we will ask you some things about your project name, your project description, if you want to use GraphQL layer, REST layer, and we will generate it for you. Basically, we have the domain and the infrastructure code. The idea is to work only in the domain, only in the document files. We don't want you work in infrastructure code, but we provide you because sometimes you need to do something customizable, so it's there for you code it. So basically, what the CLI provides for us, and this is the unique part we generate code. The other libraries don't generate code. We have our entities, and we have a complete CRUD, with the tasks, and our infrastructure. So with the GraphQL, REST, with our database files, and I think when we are creating a software, the hardest part of your job is to maintain it. So, okay, we could use a CLI to create it from scratch. It's nice. We will save, 2 days of work. Well, yeah, it's nice. But to maintain a software is the most expensive part of our job. So, basically we could use the herbs update to read again our entity, so we could add a new entity, and our CLI will generate for you all the repositories, use cases, and test use case. So, for example, we generate the create, the update, delete, and the tests, everything for you. So you don't need to write the boring code, you know? Let's focus in the funny code. And I think the most important part it's in open source. So I would like to invite everybody here to contribute. If you never did a contribution in some open source code, we like so much to teach you, because we believe many developers want to contribute for open source, but they don't know how to do the first step. So you could find in our documentation a tutorial how to contribute on herbs. And I'd like to say we are in the GitHub, and we have many issues there, and all the issues is tagged. And if somebody would like to do your first contribution on herbs, you could looking for the good for beginners tag. So it will be a easy issue that you could read the description and implement it yourself. So, and talking about our roadmap for the next months and the next glues and the next layers that we will try to automate it, we are thinking to create a serverless layer. So herbs to serverless. You know, we are thinking to create herbs to Swagger. You know, we have many glues to create there, and everything you want to do, like for example, I have RabbitMQ layer, and I don't want to write all the same code every time to consume our use case. When I receive some message, you could create a glue. So just read the use case and entities and use the metadata for generated. Let's automate our self job. So I'd like to say thank you very much. If somebody has some questions, you could find me at LinkedIn, at GitHub, at Twitter. I'm super accessible, and I will be super happy to help you. And if you have 2 minutes, I would like to ask you for give us a feedback reading this QR code. There you could find this presentation, Google form, and I will update there. Sorry, the project that I showed in these slides. So yes, thank you very much.